American partisanship is nuts, y'all. It is crazy. The idea that you can only vote for one of two parties. It's structurally set up that way. We can't get out of it. With our Constitution set up the way it is, which honestly I would be afraid to touch with a 10-foot pole, changing the Constitution right now, because people are nuts and they don't understand rights and freedoms, natural rights, any of it. They're like humanity is not up for opening that document up and trying to change it. Shouldn't be done. Um, that said, I, I don't think the government should exist in the first place, but it requires people to know what a right is before you can do something like that. And people have no ideas what they don't know what rights are. They know what privileges are, and they think that the privileges are rights, and they think that their privileges, which they call rights, are revocable based on people's fears, emotions, the society's general feeling about how things ought to be. That's not how rights work. That's a different video. But the partisanship thing, this is what's really interesting and why rights are important here. Well, let me cover rights really quickly. A right is something you can do without infringing on someone else's right. It sounds circular, but stay with me. You have a right to defend yourself. It's your first, most fundamental right that you have. You have a right to keep someone from coming into your space and punching you, from coming into your space and spitting on your face, or like you have a right to defend that. That's not okay. You have a right not to have someone come up into your face and do that to you. And that's really the most basic fundamental right, is self-defense. And if you accept the self-defense right, then everything else flows from it. I can't go and put you in a situation where you need to defend yourself from me, right? I would be acting in the wrong at that point. Anyway, rights. So, bipartisanship. The game they got us playing in this country is this party over here believes in this set of rights expressed in this way, but they mean privileges, but they say rights. And then this party over here has a different suite of rights, privileges they believe in, and if you want all of the rights, none of these will give it to you. They will give you half the pie. It's actually a poop sandwich, but that's a whole other conversation. They pit themselves against each other in our mind's eye. We're watching a show that says this guy's against this guy, and the issue I care about most is represented by this guy, even though this guy is defending things I'd like to defend too. I have to go with this guy because this is the bigger issue for me and my family, yada yada, blah blah blah. So you vote for team this one instead of team this one, but you get this one, and they're gonna support your right for whatever, and they're gonna diminish rights in other respects. Same thing if this one had gotten in. They're going to diminish certain rights and vault other rights. You can't have freedom that way. It doesn't work that way. This two-party system is nonsense. You don't have a party saying, "How about just freedom?" That party doesn't exist. And in this country, people are afraid of freedom because through a horrible lack of education, people think freedom means doing whatever the hell you want to whomever you want. That's not what freedom means. You have a responsibility to protect the rights of other people as well as the rights of your own self. We look out for each other. It is freedom comes through community that is voluntary, and that's another thing with this whole thing. Nothing here is voluntary. This guy and this guy, they're saying opposite things. I'm going to do this to the people you don't like. Well, I'm going to do this to the people you don't like. It's not about freedom and voluntary associations between people. It's about coercion, enforcement, extortion. That's what we got here, and we can't get out of it in an American bipartisan system. which sucks because we've got our Constitution, which is barely holding on by a thread. You could, I mean, what free speech has been through over the last few years um, shouldn't have been possible with a working Constitution. It doesn't really work. Um, but can you imagine not having it at all and not having a recourse of the court to uh, come down on the side of, well, actually, yeah, no, free speech is a thing and you have to abide by it. Um, if that possibility isn't even there anymore, we've got a whole big problem, and I think we're very close. Um, the American bipartisan system is sadly a problem that is structural. It's baked into our Constitution, and like I said, I wouldn't want to try to modify the Constitution right now. People aren't up for it. Um, People can't agree on what's up and what's down. Common sense is gone. Everyone is frightened because they've been exposed to psychological operations for all of my lifetime. I mean, uh, the Cold War, as much as it was maybe a real threat, it was also something that was pinging everyone's amygdala. Um, the War on Terror, the Two Towers, um, uh, Ice Age, then global warming, then climate change, uh, ozone layer. We don't talk about that so much anymore. Um, sea level rise, uh, all these things that have been put out into the ether through the media, through the phones, through the TV, through newspapers, talking heads everywhere. They're all telling you to be afraid. They want you to be afraid of gay people. They want you to be afraid of uh, everyone. They want you to be afraid of people who want to take care of their families. The nuclear family is somehow uh, uh, controversial right now. It's fascinating, but it's horrifying because it's all about horror. It's all about fear. It's all about making everyone scared of other people. Person across the street from you, scary, really scary. Horrible relations between neighbors and families within families. The whole COVID thing, that got really crazy. Now, you can talk about, oh, well, this was necessary, that was necessary. I need you to see that to the degree that you believe something was necessary, it's because you were afraid. That's what did it. It was fear. Fear, 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 fear. I don't know what we're going to do about that. Because the education failed us. I used to teach people train people for emergency situations. It was part of my job once upon a time. And one of the things I used to tell the young guys who are just starting to learn a new thing is that it's very hard to read in an emergency. It's very hard to absorb information, read critically, and think in emergency. So while it's not an emergency, learn as much as you can. Practice as much as you can when it's not an emergency. The difficulty we've got right now is that to everybody all the time, it always feels like an emergency. We're in panic mode. Everyone's in panic mode. I've fallen victim to it myself. I'm annoyed at myself for falling for some things that were legitimately scary, but I could have handled it differently. And I could have handled it differently if I had thought through it a little bit more before the emergency. I mean, once the emergency was there, the thinking goes off. I've got sympathy for people who have been fooled over the last 4 years, 5 years, into giving up their human sovereignty to horrible politicians because the politicians gave them a promise of safety in the future if you just give up a little freedom. It's something that is never true. They're never going to give you freedom for that. They might get bored of their tyranny, but they're not going to give you freedom back. they will simply dial it back and put it in their back pocket, and next time they scare you, you'll jump higher because you've already been trained to jump high. That's what we've got going on right now. We've got psychological operations working on us. Um, I believe there's highly organized stuff that falls into the category of psychological operations. I think that um, the boogeyman doesn't need to be there for you to have a negative uh, response to fear. I mean, a human being scared will act a certain way that they wouldn't act if they were not scared. It happens all the time. It's leveraging your psychology, whether or not there's some mastermind hand doing everything to you. It still is going to impact you to be in fear all the time. So how do we not be afraid? Right now, it's middle of February 2025. We've got a new president who has allowed a billionaire tech nerd to start scouring through the American government systems with computer algorithms to see if they can find wasteful money. He started firing everyone en masse. It's causing a lot of chaos. A lot of people are scared. And a few years ago, we had a different president in there telling every federal worker that they had to accept an experimental injection in their arm, two experimental injections in their arm, and maybe even boosters. I don't remember if we mandated boosters. I think at least the 2 shots, or they couldn't have a job. A lot of people lost their job under that administration. We've got people playing strongman at the highest forms of our government, and to people who don't have military generals on speed dial, this is scary stuff, no matter who's in charge. And that's kind of the problem, is that it doesn't matter who's in charge. We've got this dialectic where I'm afraid of these things and I'm afraid of these things, and no matter who wins, about half of the people are going to be scared for their lives. And that's set up in our system. It's one person scared, then other person scared, then one person scared, then the other person scared. 4 to 8 years. Guys, that's going to tire out our brains. That's going to tire out our hearts. We can't just get wrapped up in this crap in the way that we're inevitably being pushed to get wrapped up in this crap. We need to wake up to the fact that we have a right to exist. Because a lot of the people that are here look at you as a mere pawn on a chessboard. They can use you or let you be captured by the other team, and they don't care. They don't care. They don't care about you. The only emotion they can have towards you is contempt. They think you are poop on their shoe. Every politician does. They might not start out that way, but by the time they've gotten to a level where they can start making decisions for other people in a big way, they don't look at other people as complete human beings anymore. They're pawns at best. At best, they're pawns. At best, we look like pawns to them. At worst, we look like grass or disease. At worst, to them, we look like disease. We disgust them. They have contempt for us. There are too many of us. They want all the good land. They want the good views. They want the clean streets. They don't want leaf blower sounds in the afternoon. They don't want fireworks on the 4th of July. They don't want other people having fun and lives that don't involve them as the center of attention. We have narcissists in charge, guys. We keep electing them. It just boosts their narcissism, makes them feel even more important than everyone else. Electing these people is not a good idea. Giving over your sovereignty is not a good idea. Stop doing it. I don't have a coherent message for you other than you're a human being. You have a right to exist. You have a right to defend yourself. You have a right to defend your family from those who are actively seeking to do you harm. It's your first, most basic, fundamental right. All other rights flow from that. The list of rights that is listed in the back of the Constitution is fundamentally a list of enumerated and unenumerated privileges that the government is supposed to respect. But the government doesn't respect it because it's made up of politicians who have nothing but contempt for you. They are narcissists. They think you poop under their shoe. It's time for us to figure this out and contemplate, well, how could I do without these systems? These systems that are put in place, these institutions, our institutions are slave systems. They're chains, guys. Figure it out. You have a right to exist. It's fundamental. You have the absolute right to assert your right to exist. It's non-negotiable. A deer bounding through a field has a right to try to live. A rabbit has a right to try to live. Now, and defend themselves. Rabbit can kick a guy in the nose. Rabbit's allowed to do that. It's afraid. A deer can kick a hunter in the face. It's allowed to do that. It's defending its life. Every creature on this planet has that right, including you. You have a right to exist. You have a right to keep the people threatening you off your back. You have that right. If you go down this rabbit hole far enough, you'll figure out that government can't rightly exist to get into your life and threaten you. I think there's a question of resources around the world. There's a question of clean water, clean air, clean food that we got to put some guardrails on some people. I'm open to that. I'm pretty far down the anarchist rabbit hole, but at the same time, there's some big problems that don't get addressed simply by anarchism, because we got some mean, evil people out there. And yes, we do have mean, evil people out there. A lot of them are in office. A lot of them wear badges. A lot of them collect money for the government. We got a lot of evil people out there, and a lot of them work in our government. We got to figure that out, people. And then help our neighbors to figure it out. We can't change a single thing until people start realizing that we are under attack by our own governments. Our governments look at us as poop under a shoe. Figure it out. They don't love you. They don't care for you. Yes, they have programs that benefit people. That doesn't mean that they have a right to do what they're doing to everybody. They're stomping on you day in, day out, taking your money day in, day out, making you fearful day in and day out. They need to stop. You need to stop letting them scare you. You need to talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family, figure out, hey, how could we do this without some of these government support systems? Could we do this? What would we do? If we had to, get avocados by ourselves instead of having a multinational trade deal with an avocado consortium that's global, like how could we get our own avocados? How could we get our own eggs if we needed to? A little bit of resilience is important. Um, we'll talk about resilience some other day. But anyway, have a good day. Quit being afraid. Figure out, find time in your day to learn stuff in a calm way without being afraid. Thanks.